Hello and welcome to SquishiVision. My name is Harris Qureshi and this is my reaction to Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 1. So I made reaction having just watched the episode, so I haven't scrubbed through it to pick out any kind of details or Easter eggs or anything like that. I also haven't watched Part 2 yet because I need to go shower, but I figured I'd use two parts to react to Part 1 and then watch Part 2 and then react to Part 2 afterwards. So later on today there'll be a Part 2 reaction, not quite sure when, probably around the 8 o'clock mark, but we'll see what happens, depending on what it takes me to get some other errands done. But yeah, so here's my thoughts on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Honestly, it's like film level quality, which I mean, with nothing, I don't want to disparage non-film level quality of visual medium, but like there's clearly a lot of production value in here which shows clear, like, we need to give this character a lot of, we need to like treat this character with a lot of gravitas and respect. We need to do that by kind of throwing a lot of value to what we're going to produce, and it ties in very, very closely to the films. I mean, the episode 1 of this series starts off with a recap, which is basically a recap of Obi-Wan Kenobi's journey and his relationship with Anakin in the prequel series, and like we get a nice little montage of basically prequels orientated around that plot line. So that was nice. That's nice, kind of like emphasizing this as a continuation of the film's story. And then we start off with a flashback to Order 66, because apparently there's nothing more, something that Star Wars fans like more than reliving the trauma in different perspectives of Order 66. But we get yet another flashback to Order 66. It's shot in a way which is very similar to the way we see Grogu's kind of recollection of Order 66, which is very interesting. Like a whole, like, the cinematography and the way the lighting is, it's very similar to that, more so than it is in kind of other mediums. So I find that very interesting. And I think so. My first kind of commentary is, it's not explicitly kind of established, but there is one young black girl child in that collection of younglings who has a very particular line about, well, she's focused on, and one of the other younglings is like, what do we do? And she's like, we run. And she has the last line, like, she's the center of the frame. So I think it's pretty strongly signed towards that this is meant to be, oh gosh, I can't remember now, what, the third sister? I can't remember what her character's name is now. But the Inquisitor, who is played by Moses Ingram. Of course I remember the actor's name, but not the character's name for once. I think it's meant to be her. I think we're going to see more flashbacks of her as a child, and how she became an Inquisitor and what beef she has, because she apparently wants, she believes she has something, she's owed something by hunting down Kenobi, and that's what makes her the main antagonist of the series, and a villain for Kenobi, although we're not sure what the connection is between the two of them just yet. But clearly she has a lot of edge and a lot of beef to her. She is so aggressive that even the other Inquisitors are like, well, the actually we've seen portrayed rather consistently, most Inquisitors act with some degree of political decorum and tact, in that they, at least put on a show for publicly of not just being brute enforcers, but they let that kind of be implicit. But from an explicit point of view, they're very kind of they're very much kind of the whole like professional shoulder officer decorum, especially the Grand Inquisitor with his kind of stance. And so she's just coming through being all threatening and not even hiding the fact that she has kind of a Graxo Eind. She flat out, chops off someone's hand in a very nonchalant way, which is like, yee! Well, I mean, it's a Star Wars trope, isn't it? I guess, what else are we expecting? But, she does that. She is very kind of, I think she's actually the only Inquisitor who actually ignites her lightsaber the entire time. And yeah, it's super aggressive. So we know what her deal is. We established that most Inquisitors believe that Kenobi's probably dead at this point. And I imagine that echoes kind of the Empire stance around Kenobi. I think they assume after 10 years, they assume, I think, that Kenobi would have gone into hiding, which is very clever, and it's what's been played around with this episode. And so she alone clearly is fixated on Kenobi and goes kind of rogue to find him. Ewan McGregor is back as Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's not news. We all knew that as kind of obvious. And I mean, yeah, clearly brings his A game, because why would he not? I mean, this is his show, and his chance to kind of live a character he is very famous for. And yeah, he it's interesting. We see a very vulnerable and very broken Kenobi. Like, it's dark how broken, and considering, you know, how he is in the prequel trilogy, but also like the characterization in the Clone Wars. And you know, it's not a show I can say I grew up with. I was, what, 13, 14, 15 when I started to watch it? Yeah, I guess I did grow up a bit. I'm like more than 10 years older now, actually, since I started. So yeah, okay, I did grow up with the Clone Wars. And he's a character who's very cool, collected, and confident in that show. He rarely has low points. Although, to be fair, show as dark as it gets doesn't really brick characters so much. But anyway, so compared to how he was in the Clone Wars, here is much more vulnerable. You know, he's forced to be, because he can't use any of that confidence, because it'll draw attention to himself. And it's clear that he's a character who understands the weight of the task that's put to him, in terms of he has to protect Luke, even if that means, you know, not being able to stand up. And we have this whole thing about, you know, the Jedi compelled to do good and act well, and he's put in a situation where he sees someone being bullied and he chooses not to intervene, in a way which he probably would be able to do in his very kind of diplomatic way that he's used to doing. But here is like, well, I can't, because then I'll risk Luke's life, and that's powerful stuff. He hasn't quite moved into his hut that we see him living in the New Hope. I don't know if that's an extra kind of place he has. I don't know if we're gonna see that during the show, and why he kind of moves into. But at the moment, he's living in a cave, which is overseeing the Lars farmstead. Cute moment where he spends like a bunch of his money basically buying a gift for Luke, and then Owen basically chucks it back at his feet. I'm like, come on, Owen. I mean, to be fair, I understand Owen's perspective. And I guess we can use this as a kind of segue to talk about Owen, played by, I think, Joel Legend. I can't remember the name of the character. Maybe even that's even the wrong actor's name. But gosh, they're gonna make this character so likable for us, and the more they make this character likable for us, the more his death in The New Hope is more retroactively painful. I always found the death of the Lars like painful. Like, I know from like a thematic point of view, they're very much the instigating factor of Luke's journey, and they're very much a plot device in that sense. And you know, from an heroic arc point of view, they're the necessary parental sacrifice that we're not really meant to feel that bad about in the huge scheme of things, because they were what was holding Luke back from his journey. But when you overcome that, it's like these guys like got brutally killed for something which they were not really part of, and that's like kind of dark when you. And I always was like sad, especially by Beru's death. And like I always get really like I'm always hit hard by these deaths in fiction that are like off screen, but we see kind of the brutal aftermath. I always find those more impactful than deaths that we see on screen, because, or like deaths that we see off screen and then we see the impact afterwards, because it's like your brain fills in the gap of the horror of the situation, and that's always hits me more. So things like this always hit me more. So like I always was like, as a young person when I first watched Star Wars, I was always like, damn, this is a very dark moment. And then the more they're gonna have Owen in this show, the more we see Owen be a likable person, the more it's gonna impact me hard. And same thing goes for Bail Organa, who, you know, was a completely off-screen character in A New Hope, and then the more show of us here, the more like this guy gets like killed, this guy gets deaded, like he gets his own, him and his planet get destroyed in like 9 years time. Like, sad, you know. So yeah. Also, did we know we were gonna get a Leia subplot? Was that like one of the bits of the show that were kind of like I don't think I heard that before, so maybe I missed it, or maybe that was like from the secrets, but like I didn't know that they were getting Organa's back. I didn't know they were gonna have a whole kind of bit set on Alderaan. But it's great to see a lot more of Alderaan planet, considering that it is another massive kind of dark moment in the original films. But we never really connected with it because obviously we never saw it from a kind of planet point of view. Here we're connecting more of Alderaan. It's like, oh, everyone we see in a shot in this, you know, most people we see here are probably gonna end up deaded as well. Like, yeah. But yeah, we see a young Leia, and I absolutely love the way they're portraying her. You know, someone who's slightly rebellious. She's got an arc going about responsibility, but also like her intelligence, like the fact that she we thought Owen's whole meme-worthy roast of like you trains his father was like gonna be the biggest roast of the show, but no, the biggest roast was Leia literally tearing down beautifully her bully of her cousin, just pointing out his insecurities in such a armor-piercing way. That was like, hot damn, that was absolutely loved that bit of the show. And you know, like there's no way this child is not instantly endeared to me. Like children characters and actors are hard to do. You know, it's just hard at a young age to kind of, and I get, you know, she's not one of the best actors, but the lines she's given and where she like doesn't, you know, she delivers them in a suitable way, and just like the whole like majority of it, like, yes, good on you, Leia, you tear that bully down. And I like that she's the reason that Ben Kenobi, like I was always worried and wary about this show, because I was like, well, if we see too much of what Obi-Wan does, if he goes to the adventures, it could potentially undermine the ultimately what kind of happens with the characters. Sorry, if he does too much, it's like, well, you know, it kind of undermines the whole mythos of him in A New Hope, if that makes sense. And him going on the whole adventures and maybe protecting Luke, but Leia is like Belle's right. Leia is as important as Luke is, and that's something which, you know, isn't really discussed as much in the original trilogy or afterwards. I mean, the original trilogy is not discussed enough because from a Doyleistic point of view, she wasn't established as Luke's twin sister until the last film, and that wasn't what Lucas's intention was. And then from, you know, from a Sony point of view, I think they were all, for whatever reason, putting their money more on Luke than they were on Leia. And Leia was always the backup plan, which is always kind of, I know we discussed the kind of the unfairness of this, like having like Leia being a backup plan, like why her? Why wasn't she the main one? And then after the fact, it doesn't really matter anymore, and obviously Leia didn't choose to go down the route of a Jedi anyway. So it's nice that someone's actually commenting that, you know, Leia is as important as Luke is. Although also Obi-Wan's kind of right, and maybe there should be a bit more of a debate there about he can't just abandon his post, because what happens to Luke during that time, and then they've kind of lost both their fishes, or whatever the analogy is. But yeah, if there was ever a reason to bring Obi-Wan off, I think I said Obi-Wan off planet, it was to save Leia, and so I'm glad that's a stake that they've put for this. I love the kind of world building of I like how we're seeing a very lived in Tatooine. I like the fact that Obi-Wan has to do a job to get just the barest amount of credits. This whole bits of his life, like him cooking, his like rudimentary security system, how he's buried his lightsabers. That was a nice moment, and I think it's a callback to the Rise of Skywalker. The other Jedi bit was, I think they could have played a bit more with that before that Jedi got killed off. But also, why did he tell him to go back to town where he'd already been like ID'd as a Jedi? Surely you would tell him to go like elsewhere, or, you know, live in a cave like he is. But yeah, I gotta go shower now. Those are my thoughts on that episode. Like, I love it setting up. Love kind of how grounded it is. And as soon as I've done my errands and put my washing up, I'm gonna come back and watch part 2. So if you're interested in my point of view, subscribe. I mean, no one's watching this, so I can see nothing, so I imagine by the time part 2 comes out, it'll have come out. That makes sense. But, you know, if you watch this in the time before I come and produce part 2 today and turn it the 9th of May, subscribe and you'll get a notification when I go live. Simple as. Okay, thanks guys, and I'll see you in a few hours.